Hello everyone, welcome to English Meow. Today, I'm going to share Emma's journey of learning English with you. Let's explore the methods she used to learn while listening to her slow-paced English reading.
Hello there. My name is Emma, and I would like to share the long path I walked to improve my English listening skills. For me, English was always a fascinating but distant language. I grew up in a coastal town where the sound of the waves was more common than the sound of foreign languages. People in my neighborhood rarely needed English in their lives, and at school we studied it only as a subject for exams. We memorized vocabulary lists, drilled grammar rules, and translated sentences back and forth. I did well in those exercises, but when it came to listening, I was hopeless. Whenever the teacher played a short recording, the words flew past me like birds in the sky, visible for a second, then gone forever. I still remember the first time I realized how serious my problem was. I was 16 when a group of tourists came to visit my town. They asked me a simple question about the local market. Even though I recognized some of the words, I could not put them together fast enough. I froze, smiled awkwardly, and finally pointed them in the right direction without saying a word. That small incident stayed with me for years, making me feel that English was a door I could not open. When I entered university, I majored in international business. Suddenly, English was everywhere, in textbooks, in articles, in guest lectures by foreign professors. Reading was challenging but manageable. Listening was a nightmare. During the first month, I sat through classes pretending to understand, while in reality, I was lost. I copied notes from classmates and tried to survive. But inside, I knew that unless I fixed my listening problem, I would not be able to succeed. That realization scared me, but it also gave me the determination to change. My journey began with baby steps. I started listening to VOA Learning English every morning. The slow pace and clear pronunciation made me feel safe, like practicing in shallow water before entering the deep sea. At first, I focused only on catching familiar words. Then, I tried to summarize the main idea after each report. I kept a notebook where I wrote down new expressions, repeating them aloud to connect sound and meaning. This simple habit became the foundation of my listening practice. As weeks turned into months, I gained confidence and moved to more challenging materials. Children's shows, with their clear speech and simple vocabulary, became my next step. I laughed at cartoons even though I was already in university because they were perfect practice. Later, I dared to watch documentaries, stopping the video whenever I missed something, replaying it again and again. It was frustrating, But each replay added another piece to the puzzle. At the same time, I realized that practice needed to be consistent. Instead of studying only once in a while, I made listening part of my daily routine. I listened while brushing my teeth, while cooking, and while taking the bus. Sometimes I did not understand much, but the background exposure created a rhythm in my ears. Slowly, English sounds stopped feeling like noise and started becoming familiar. Music. One turning point came when I joined an online study group. We were students from different countries, all struggling with English in one way or another. Every Sunday evening, we met on Zoom to practice conversation and share resources. For the first few weeks, I barely spoke. My heart raced whenever it was my turn, because I could hardly follow what the others were saying. Their accents, their speed, their slang. It all felt overwhelming. But gradually, listening to them every week trained my ears. I began to notice that even if I did not catch every word, I could still guess the meaning from context. That realization was powerful because it taught me that understanding is not about perfection, but about connection. Another breakthrough happened during my second year at university. I decided to volunteer as a guide at a local museum that welcomed international visitors. On my first day, I was terrified when a family from Canada asked about the history of an artifact. I stumbled through my explanation, mixing broken English with gestures. To my surprise, they smiled and encouraged me. They did not expect me to be perfect. They only wanted to understand and to learn. Their kindness gave me courage, and every weekend I improved a little more. By the end of that semester, I could guide groups from different countries with far more confidence. Of course, the road was not always smooth. There were many times I wanted to give up. Once, after spending hours watching a documentary, I realized I had understood almost nothing. Tears rolled down my face as I thought, maybe I will never be good enough. But the next morning, I reminded myself that every skill requires patience. Just like running a marathon, progress comes step by step. So, I returned to my notebook, replayed the documentary slowly, and forced myself to continue. Days later, when I finally understood a large part of it, I felt an incredible sense of victory. To strengthen my listening further, I also began shadowing practice. I chose short audio clips, sometimes speeches, sometimes podcasts, and tried to repeat them in real time. At first, it was impossible. My tongue could not keep up with my ears. But little by little, my speed improved. Shadowing not only trained my listening, but also improved my speaking rhythm. My friends noticed the difference and told me I sounded more natural. That encouragement motivated me to practice even harder. An important lesson I learned was that variety matters. If I only listened to one accent or one type of program, my ears became comfortable but not flexible. So I deliberately exposed myself to different accents, British dramas, Australian interviews, Indian TED Talks. Each accent was like a mountain to climb, but once I climbed it, the view expanded. Over time, I no longer panicked when hearing unfamiliar voices. Instead, I felt curious and challenged, eager to decode the message. By the end of my second year, my listening ability had transformed. I was no longer the girl who froze when tourists asked questions. Instead, I could hold real conversations, understand lectures, and even enjoy movies without subtitles. Still, I knew my journey was not finished. Language learning is like building a bridge across a wide river. Every plank matters, and the work never truly ends. When I entered my final year at university, English listening became even more important because I needed to prepare for job interviews with international companies. The thought of sitting across from an interviewer and failing to understand their questions scared me more than any exam ever had. To prepare, I began listening to business podcasts and watching interviews with CEOs. At first, I struggled because the vocabulary was technical and the speakers talked quickly. But I treated each interview like a training session. I paused, rewound, and even transcribed parts of the recordings by hand. It was slow, but it forced me to pay attention to every sound. I also created a habit of self-testing. I would listen to a recording once without subtitles, then write down what I thought I heard. Afterward, I checked the transcript to see how much I had missed. In the beginning, the gap was huge. I often captured only the main verbs or a few nouns, but gradually, the gaps shrank. The first time I could write down almost every sentence correctly, I danced around my room in celebration. That small victory gave me hope that I could handle real-world listening tasks. One of the most rewarding experiences came when I participated in an exchange program in Singapore. It was my first time living in a truly multicultural environment. My classmates came from different countries, and English was the common language. During the first week, my ears felt overloaded. Everyone spoke differently, mixing accents, slang, and expressions I had never heard before. For a moment, I feared I would sink, but then I remembered all the training I had done. The VOA reports, the documentaries, the shadowing practice. The museum guiding. I told myself, you are ready for this. Slowly, day by day, my listening adjusted. By the end of the semester, I could follow group discussions, laugh at jokes, and even give presentations without hesitation. Another step forward was learning to enjoy English outside of academic contexts. I discovered podcasts about cooking, history, and psychology. Because these topics interested me, I listened with more curiosity and less fear. Sometimes I cooked dinner while listening to a recipe explained in English, trying to follow the instructions step by step. Other times, I went for a walk while listening to a story about ancient civilizations. Without realizing it, my listening improved because I associated it with pleasure, not just study. Still, I faced setbacks. During one interview practice, a mock interviewer spoke with a strong Irish accent, and I barely understood anything. I left the room embarrassed, convinced that all my progress was an illusion. That night, I wanted to quit. But then I remembered my museum days, when tourists had encouraged me, even when I was nervous. I reminded myself that no learner understands everything all the time. The goal is not perfection, but communication. With that mindset, I replayed the recording, trained my ear to the accent, and eventually understood enough to continue. By the time I graduated, my listening skills had grown from weakness into strength. Professors noticed my progress and even asked me to mentor younger students who struggled with listening. Guiding them reminded me how far I had come. I told them honestly about my tears, my doubts, and my small victories, hoping they would see that progress is possible if they stay patient and persistent. After graduation, I started working at an international logistics company. On my very first day, I attended a team meeting where colleagues from different countries joined online. At first, the variety of accents made my head spin, but I reminded myself of all the hours I had invested. I listened carefully, took notes, and to my surprise, I understood almost everything. When it was my turn to speak, my voice shook slightly, but I managed to share my ideas clearly. That moment felt like the true reward for all the nights I had spent replaying audios, shadowing voices, and scribbling in my notebooks. In my daily work, English listening became a constant requirement. I received phone calls from clients abroad, joined video conferences, and followed instructions from foreign partners. Each task tested my ability, but instead of fearing mistakes, I embraced them as opportunities to learn. I noticed that listening is not just about catching words, but about understanding tone, intention, and culture. Sometimes a colleague would joke, And even if I did not understand every word, I could sense the humor and respond with laughter. These small moments of connection reminded me that language is more than grammar. It is about building bridges. Outside of work, I continued to nourish my listening habit. I watched films without subtitles, sometimes pausing to jot down new phrases. I joined book clubs where members discussed novels in English, pushing myself to follow every twist in the conversation. I even began recording my own reflections after listening to podcasts, comparing my speech with the original to see if I had captured the rhythm and pronunciation. Slowly, English became not just a tool, but a part of my daily life. Looking back, I realized that the journey transformed more than just my listening ability. It changed the way I see challenges. At the beginning, I viewed English listening as an impossible wall. Now, I see it as a mountain. I climbed step by step, learning patience, discipline, and resilience along the way. Every failure taught me to stand up again. Every success, no matter how small, gave me strength to continue. Today, when new learners ask me how to improve their listening, I share my story. I tell them about my awkward silence with tourists, my tears after failed documentaries, my nervous first guiding session at the museum, and my shaky voice during online meetings. I also tell them about the joy of understanding a film without subtitles, the pride of giving a presentation abroad, and the warmth of laughing with colleagues from different cultures. My message is simple. Progress is slow, but it is real. If you keep listening, keep practicing, and keep believing, the sounds that once felt foreign will one day feel like home. My journey is not over. I still encounter new accents and unfamiliar vocabulary, and sometimes I still miss words in fast conversations. But instead of frustration, I now feel excitement because each challenge means another chance to grow. English has given me confidence, friendships, and opportunities I never imagined. Most importantly, it has shown me that persistence turns weakness into strength. And so, I keep listening every day, every moment, knowing that with each sound, I am not just learning a language, but also shaping the person I want to be.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to listen to Emma's experience of learning English today. I hope that after hearing her learning journey, it will be helpful for your own English studies. But please remember, no matter what, never stop learning. One day, you will see a unique version of yourself.